There she is.
There you go.
There. Thank you, dear. Good morning, good evening, good afternoon. She left already. So, what you got? What you think? Here, listen to this. And happy Valentine's Day. Boo-boo-ba-doo-boo-boo. Oh. What do you think of yesterday's show?
Self-expansion theory suggesting that the best way to something that you thought was a weak spot on me as a way to feel better about your own health because you thought I was so healthy, and then you attacked my heaviest weights that I used that never hurt me and strengthened my body and made me feel good to do because when I first got here you used to If I Had a Hammer, covered by Nikki Thomas. This is Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, The War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. As the 2024 election heats up, the Poor People's Campaign announced this month the plans to catalyze the voting power of poor and low-wage workers across the United States. As part of a 40-week operation, thousands of volunteers are working to mobilize 15 million voters with the first major coordinated actions taking place outside 30 state houses on March 2nd, 3 days before Super Tuesday. The voting bloc, described as a sleeping giant, could potentially determine the outcome of the elections. Activists say nearly half of U.S. voters are living in poverty or low-wage households. This is Alabama activist Linda Burns, a former Amazon worker, speaking at a news conference with the Poor People's Campaign last week. $180 a week. $180 a week. Amazon, let me go. Because
I live on $80 a week. You know, BB Brown Pants, who started off with, "You tried to hurt me." You know, nobody can hurt you. The only person who can hurt you is yourself. The only person who's ever hurt me is me. Right? And as I try to teach, the best thing to do, there's 2 little mantras that you should have. What's that cake you got there?
Oh, we're out. It was coconut cake.
The We're Out cake.
We're out cake. How many pieces you want of that? 3? Sorry,
No, that's cool. Did you make it or did the Entenmann's? It was the store-bought cake? So I don't have to be. Somebody made it? Does that come most times? Oh, okay. I'll be quicker to ask. Anyway, so this is, one of the last holler spots. So actually, instead of buying it from the corporation, they make it themselves. And it's okay. And she likes me because I don't, as long as she gives me my first cup of coffee when I sit down, I'm good. I don't care, So she knows that. She does that. So anyway, right. So 2 mantras: conscious intent. I am. I mean, everything you do. Like I was talking to a guy who's a contractor yesterday, and what he does is the hurricane comes and your house gets flooded, or the tornado blows your house up. He comes and ameliorates it so it can be saved. And then he's rebuilt it back. And so my neighbor's house got whacked by a storm the other day, and the insurance people were pretty quick on it. And this guy's pretty good. So, I've talked to him a couple of times. When we had snow, right? I see these scars, these two scars. I got those when I was maybe 8 months old, and my sister tried to murder me. It was Easter time. I was born in, well, however old, I was born in February, and February, March, April, right? So 3 months old, she had gotten a metal bunny that had a little wheelbarrow that chocolate eggs were in, right? So she tried to kill me because the ears were metal, and she was trying to stab me with the metal bunny's metal ears. And what she got was, when my mother came in, it was like bleeding profusely, and luckily she didn't get it in my eyes. I mean, she didn't get the metal in my eyes, but I was 3 months old or 4 months, whatever I was, and so it just went on from there. Right? I mean, I died when I was born through incompetence of the doctors, and I would be a dead duck if this angel of mercy, who invented modern delivery of babies, she invented the heart monitor for the baby. She invented the creamy. They didn't really have incubators. And they had incubators for chickens before they had them for babies. She had grown up on a farm, seen it, and she was doing that. Anyway, so she saved my life. I mean, she was kind of a midget. She was 4'1", 2, and she went in there and she saw these guys were smoking cigarettes. They didn't have gloves on. They didn't have masks on. My mom was smoking cigarettes with them, and she came in and she kicked this doctor in the leg, and he went down like a bag of potatoes, right? And I remember this. I remember being in my mother's uterus, right? I remember being in my mother's stomach, and she just kept drinking Manhattan after Manhattan. I was like, "Woo, party!" Right? I remember. Right? I remember pretty much everything. When my youngest sister did this to me, and when I was 5 or 6 years old, I hadn't gotten murdered by the nun yet. So I 5 or 6 years old, not quite 6. 6 or 7 is when you're in first grade, and I think, and that's when the nun murdered me. But my Uncle Steve bought me a cowboy outfit. I mean, I got everything secondhand. I mean, the clothes. I was wearing my sister's clothes, and she was the closest one to me. And so my Uncle Steve bought me, the what do you call those things? The chaps and the vest and the cowboy hat and the cap gun, and so and cowboy boots, and I got those, and my Uncle Steve was putting them on me, and I was like, oh wow, this is cool. I was like going around with the chaps and the gun and the cowboy, and my sister went apoplectic, and my mother took the cowboy. Yeah, I want that. She just wouldn't shut up. My sister would never shut up. And and she acted out, right? She acted out, right? You can see right there. It's like 60 years ago, more, 70 something years ago. Anyway, so she was screaming and screaming, and so my mother took it all off, and I was there standing in my underpants, barefoot, and my Uncle Steve, no, no. And she goes, Steve, shut up. Right? And that was the end of my Uncle Steve having anything to do with my parents. But not, he didn't end up with me. I mean, my mom would just drop me off at Uncle Steve's on the weekend, and he'd let me play around with mechanical. He was an electrical and mechanical engineer. He worked for Remington Rand, and he invented a number of things that brought. He was like Tesla. He industrial engineer. So little widgets and things that made the assembly line work faster. Uncle Steve invented, and Rand would make all this money, and he would paid relatively well, but nothing to the level of how much money he made for the corporation. Right? And then they just cut him loose, when they didn't need him anymore. They cut him loose, and he was smart enough to, invest here or there, and so he, not a problem. But anyway, pretty much every Saturday and Sunday, my mom would drop me up around Friday, and it was about 4. And but this is if I was with my parents. If I was with my grandma, I was with her. Anyway, and my grandma was, she was my father's mother, and her whole scene was way different than his and my mother's together. They were like social, this movie about the guy who wrote In Cold Blood, that the thing about the swans. I think it's on TV, and so that was the kind of world they lived in, right? And they weren't of that world, but they were, meaning they weren't genetically from that world, but intellectually, they, like my mom, like when I was 16, how old? 14, when I went to Europe first time with my parents, because they had no place to put me, so they brought me along. And we were in Ireland first, right? I think that was, no, they might have been to Ireland before, but we went to Ireland, and then we went to London, and my parents, no, they kept me in Ireland, in Dublin, in this hotel, really fancy hotel, and that place, they had waiters and waitresses, and all the staff were Irish people. They came from Limerick and Galway and all over the place, so they had like little dormitories down in the basement. So my dad, slipped the manager, Benjamin, and said, "Here, get him a room and let him eat here. Keep an eye on him. And we're gonna, So my parents went away for 2 weeks, and in that 2 weeks, they went to Rome. They went to Paris and Rome. First Paris to this kind of, I don't even know what to call it. My dad, he left the Air Force as a bird colonel, but he had worked in the Manhattan Project. See, people don't realize the Manhattan Project wasn't just about the atom bomb. It covered all of exotic and what was quote unquote what was it? Foreign technology, right? Operation Paperclip, all of that, right? And that was already happening before the end of the war. People don't realize, go back and look before we got involved, before, Japan bombed Hawaii, and just by chance, the naval force that the Japanese bombed were all of the obsolete destroyers and, big boats that, they were like from the 1880s, right? Like they were from the Spanish-American War. They were not ready for modern World War II warfare or even World War I warfare. And so they just left them there. And they basically, the military knew the Japanese were coming. And why the Navy guys like to be billeted in Hawaii is that, all the rest of the guys had to sleep on the boat and sleep in a hammock, right? It was like, 1890s kind of Navy. And but if they were on board of ships that were stationed in Hawaii, they had, billets for them. They had, everybody had their own little room and could put on the Hawaiian shirt and go and hang with the girls, right? And half the girls were Japanese spies, soaking them for information. So anyway, when the naval intelligence and the guys knew the Japanese were coming, they broke the Purple Code. They basically, the weekend that they knew the Japanese were going to attack, they put all of those soldiers, all those sailors, about 4,000 of them, on board those ships. Okay, get out of there's an order, get out of your apartments and come down to the ship and get in that hammock. So they did, and they would just, and they told everyone, so this Sunday here, you can sleep in, you don't have to get up at 6 in the morning. 10 is good enough because the Japanese hit around 7, right? So all those guys were asleep. Boom, all those boats got And a lot of the big boats that had like 600, 700 guys on board, the Navy, or what I would call the dark force of our government, um, basically put explosives on the keels of those boats so they would flip over, right? And that's what they did. And the Navy guys, they were trying to get their buddies out, and they were ordered not to because they wanted to have enough dead people to get people pissed off. It's pretty much just like 9/11, you know. Because during Bill Clinton's time in the 80s or 90s, the blind cheek had a big truck full of dynamite and blew it up in the parking garage in the basement and took out 2 or 3 floors, right? So after that, they had really strict anything, the bell goes off, everyone gets out of all the buildings, period, right? 9/11 happens, the first building gets whacked and everyone gets out. And the building number 2, they had security saying, no, go back up to your office. It's all fine. It's all good. It's all clear. And everyone went up there. And so there was enough people to be 3,000 dead, 3,000 plus. So, but there were tons of really rich people who had offices in those buildings. There were people who had meetings at Windows on the World, and they were all told, "Oh, don't show up this day." Virtually everything, Jamie Dimon and all his people didn't show up that day, right? And if you really want to know what happened, go read Architects and Engineers against, architects. 9/11 Truth, Architects and Engineers, Architects and Engineers, 9/11 Truth, right? Something like that. They did a real clear, and it showed. I mean, there's this video of the towers coming down, and they look like a waterfall of dust, just right. There's no way those buildings should, if they kind of went down the way Popular Mechanics, and that was the congressional investigation used Popular Mechanics, not even Popular Science, Popular Mechanics, as their technical, specialists, experts, right? They had, they could have gone to Los Alamos, they could have gone to laboratories, weights and measures, a whole bunch of people who have way more better than, Popular Mechanics, really. And so they're the guys who said, "Oh, yeah, it melted at these." And see, when they built those buildings, the thing that held each floor up wasn't. Each floor was an acre big, acre, right? And each floor had no columns whatsoever. It was clear open space, right? And what held that floor up was the outside of the building. It was called the birdcage, and it was this structural entity on the outside of the building that all of the steel was connected to, and the floors were 4 foot thick with rebar mats that were like 4 inches in that. It was like, forget about it. What they said happened never. The metal that melted was when they started to build the floor. They would put up decking, the corrugated steel that you see the roofs in big box stores, right? The kind of steel that big box stores have. They would put that up, and then they build a floor on top of that, right? Put the forms and all the pipes and wires and the rebar, and they pour the concrete, right? And be 4 foot thick, right? And they had these cables that were aircraft cables that were that big, the kind of things that hold up the San Francisco Bridge, the George Washington Bridge, the Verrazano Bridge, those kind of, right, unbelievably unbreakable cables, and they would pour it concrete, pre-stressed, let it set up with its cables, really tight, and then it would all set up, and then they let it go a little bit, and then tighten it up to the outside skeleton. So no, the way that building came down was a space-based weapon that basically changed through harmonics. It was a Tesla scalar wave that broke down the molecular bonds of the concrete and steel, turned it into dust. And there's a doctor, I forget her name, but she wrote a whole thesis on it in Architects and Engineers for 9/11 Truth, right? So, um, and so what we have is a continuation of
Pete Ward, PhD, author and professor of theology at Durham University, discussing the intersection of
What she saw and how she responded came from that fierce compassion that she couldn't handle seeing people mistreating each other and the planet in that way. And she lost it. Well, here we are back in the same situation. Things are completely out of balance. Ma'at, who is the concept and goddess of justice and truth, balance and harmony, is completely been forgotten by the powers that be at this time. And so Sekhmet's back, and she's coming back with a vengeance, but in a very different way. And she is calling her people. And this book is a call out to those people who recognize her name, because she comes into their dreams and she comes into their, she walks past a statue.
She's talking about an Egyptian goddess, right? And so everyone who is of Abraham school of theology, Jews, Muslims, Christians, they're all the same. There is no difference between the Palestinians in the Strip and the Jews. They're the same thing. Genetically, you take their blood, you look at their DNA, they're the same people. They're killing themselves. And, Bibi, you heard him yesterday about him going on, attacked him, and going on and on. I mean, that's the, insane clone party of the hard right of the Khazarian mob, the people in charge. They're not even a government, they're a mob. What is a mob reality? There is no logic to it, there is no balance to it, right? So you look at all the history and all the different cultures, and you can see all these, the Egyptian culture, the Greek culture, they all had gods, lots of them. They all had a singular God, who was kind of in charge, which is very similar to the Abrahamic concept of Elohim, name of God that you're not supposed to use. And basically, we are here. People don't realize what Earth is a test bed. We're here to be, this is like a boot camp. And we're going to be used soon. And we're going to be attacked by aliens. And all these wars that are going on now is just to harden the human species to this attack. To get them to, it's like, the BB's Insane Clown Party is basically a reptilian alien crew, right? Even though they have Homo sapien, this ain't you kids. This is just an avatar. That's what it is. And everyone's like putting on their VR goggles and living in VR space, and you go watch the movies. The Matrix. I used to have a sweetie, Christine Barton. She invented, the algorithm that made computer graphics work. Because before her, they had to write an algorithm for every frame of the freaking movie, which cost a zillion times more, and it would look like cartoon characters, right? So she was the first person to write an algorithm that you could use that one algorithm for the whole movie, And her PhD thesis was the algorithm that she ran to animate Pixar's Little Lamp. That was her thesis. She was at, there in Silicon Valley at Stanford, and she went from being undergrad to PhD like that, and they put her in a place where they paid her pretty good, way more than anybody else. Still, she was turning out stuff that was worth trillions of dollars, and she'd make $100,000. And then GE got her, and she was writing this major algorithm for all of GE, and it just wasn't through. And she was working in, the Rockefeller Center, 60 Rock. She was, doing the software for NBC, but it was for all of everything GE, largest military industrial contractor at that point. So, she and I were a thing for 2 years, and she was just brilliant. And she loved me because I understood exactly what she was doing. But I wasn't. There were all these guys who were like threatened by her, so she could never get a boyfriend because they would like hit on her just so they could be around her and then step on her shoulders to get up in the high end, right? And that's kind of how it works. Women run everything. They control everything, but the men own it. Anyway, I understood exactly what she was doing. We could talk all about it, right? She could explain it to me, and I'd understand it. I'd give her insights that I had. Oh, I never thought of that. Oh, that's good. Okay. And I was the only human being that ever got an all-in ID for General Electric. That didn't work for them. Meaning, every time on Sundays, we would go, well, I would go and pick up goodies, and she would go to the office before I even woke up. I would get goodies, and I'd walk in, and then I'd have to go through security, and she would have to come down and sign me in. And when she was not at that, they would love it if they could have chained her to the computer and kept her there 24/7. But she'd be in there, she'd be working, and she'd have to stop and come down. It would take about half an hour for her to come down. But she couldn't just stop. She had to finish whatever she was doing, and then she'd stop it, and then she'd come down, she'd sign me in, and then I'd get a temp little pass, and I'd go up with her. And her boss, Tom Alfieri, who's in charge of news, he said, I want you to come to work for us, and we'll just pay you to be Christine's boyfriend. I said, I don't think so. No, that's not. I said, we'll pay you a lot. We'll pay you $100,000 a year. We'll pay you we'll pay you whatever you want. Just keep her happy and productive. Since you came into her life, she's like unbelievably productive, and she's not causing, she's not getting upset with all these morons. And I said, I know. That means I would, have to bend to you before I care about her. No, I'm not going to do that. And so he just, until he said, okay, here's your pass. You can come in and do anything. So I used to go hang out with the kids down in Saturday Night Live, right? This is in the 80s. And before John Belushi died. It was interesting. I used to have these interesting little films. I had this filmmaker guy who would do these things, and they had John being an old man, and he was talking about all the people who were his fellow thespians at Saturday Night Live, and they all died, and he was the only one left. And he's like an old man, and he's into cemeteries, a lot of snow, and he's talking about Gilda Radner and this person and that person, and he's the first one who dies. Right? So it was quite. Go look at that. John Belushi lamenting all his buddies dead. John Belushi, walking through the cemetery as an old man, I guess would be a Google thing to look at. Anyway, so it's the same old story, but what we're heading for. So I kind of understood all of this, meaning I didn't need to, become, big fancy, because I was living amongst, I was the Emmy at Montana Power, not Montana, Buffalo Roadhouse, right? And that was a really interesting restaurant that had this back room where the Beatles and the Stones and Jimi Hendrix, you name it, they would hang out there and they would all play for each other, not for the crowd, the paying crowd, but and it was, so that was one of those places I would come in once a night, make sure that everything was fine so the inspectors wouldn't kind of roll over. And so I became really good friends with John Cale of the Velvet Underground and Judy Collins and a whole bunch of folks, right? And it wasn't like, oh, they're stars. No, they were my buds, right? And I would take them down to Chinatown to get something good to eat because, Buffalo Roadhouse had great ribs and had some other great stuff, but it was a Roadhouse, right? And that's basically the guy who owned it. That was his whole thing. And the thing was to have the place in the back. Now they had the front part where all the swirls would, and it was a big place. So that part that the general public could be in, there was about 200 seats, right? And you would see George, Harrison and John Lennon and Mick Jagger walking in, and they would go through the bar and into the back room, which the average, the rest of the folk, and there was big glass thing. So if you had a seat, you could see what was going on in there, but you couldn't go in there. You couldn't hear it. And so, so I was Emmy there, right? I was Emmy at Danceteria, at Mud Club, at Tunnel Club, Xenons, Wetlands. These are all places that I sparked up, meaning I wasn't a contractor. And most of them, I wasn't even the electrical contractor. But they would get to 98% done and nothing worked. I couldn't get the magic out of the disco, the lights running the way they should. They would bring me in and pay me pretty good to spend 2 weeks to work out the bugs. Because when you are putting something together, and it's not, most guys who do high end, like hospitals, jails, skyscrapers, there are serious blueprints, right? But discotheques, now they're serious blueprints for the structure, and there's serious blueprints with, okay, we're going to have this kind of service come in, and this is the distribution, and here are all the panels, and here's the exit lights, and here's the emergency lights. All of that stuff would be on the blueprints. But when it went to where the lighting was, there would be some guy who would say, oh, I want this kind of effect. He's not a lighting designer. He's not an electrician. He's not an ME. I'm all the above. I worked for Lester Polikoff. I was his best boy, right? Lester Polikoff was the best boy for Joe Melsiner. Joe Melsiner invented modern theater and film lighting, meaning before then, they had to make movies out in the sun, right? And before, that's why they moved to California. And because they used to make movies in New York, out in Long Island, at Ebbets Field, because they had gigantic big buildings that they put airplanes in, and they made movies in there. And so I got to be known as a guy who could make these things work, right? All the hard stuff, putting pipes in concrete and pulling wires and all that, it was all done. But to make it work, no, And I would have to design controllers for all the effects, right? And I would have, there was a guy named Zelf who had, a shop, a really serious shop. He could turn out anything. So he had a bunch of Bridgeports that could mill anything. Frank Vigiano of Vica Electric, who was the biggest electric supply. So he had a straight thing with Eagle Electric, which, I invented a kind of track light without tracks, right? And you might have seen them someplace. There are two wires, and the light fixture, instead of fitting into a track, it just runs along these wires, right? And that was my idea, and I used aircraft landing lights, so there'd be pin spots, so the light would be right on that spot instead of lighting a whole area, right? So instead of having a LECO, which is the theatrical instrument that you would use to have that effect, this light bulb did it. So had all these light bulbs, 12-volt light bulbs that were like, theater lights in a lamp. So, and they were all 12 volts. So you don't have to worry about, you know, fire or someone getting electrocuted. You could do this, right? It was like, and I had everything get plugged into the wall rather than wired straight in, right? So, but in a disco, they would use theatrical instruments. They didn't know how to hang them or to focus them or how to use them, and so I would do that. It would take me, the whole place is done, nothing works. It would take me a month or two to suss it all out, set it all up, make it work, and then we'd have the big opening, and woo, right? And then I tweak it for another month, and the 7 weeks, I'd make 30, 40 grand, and in 1973, that's not bad. Right? And then I would go live someplace, Paris, London, Ireland, Australia, just Sweden, where I would just jump on airplanes. I would, in Sweden, the people, it's like dark half the year and sunny half the year, and I would just kind of, the state didn't just take care of their health care, their housing, their job, their happiness, but gave them a vacation. It didn't just pay them their salary for 2 weeks. They paid for the vacation, airplane ride, the hotels, the tours, everything, right? So you could go down to the Stockholm airport. There was this big board of all the flights that were leaving in the next 4 hours or 10 hours that, had it all the, this week, I mean, today, these flights are going, right? So you go to the airline and you would say to them, okay, so what are these flights where there's an empty seat? And they said, well, there's this flight leaving in 2 hours and it's going to go to Istanbul, right? And, the people are already kind of lining up and there's like 20 seats that no one's showed up yet. So, yeah. So you could go, I had this Swedish driver's license that looked like a passport. And so that was like in Sweden, that was your ID, that's photo, your address, everything. They didn't ask for your passport or your birth certificate. They looked for your driver's license because that was the Swedish, that's who you are, right? So I'd show them that. They would, type up the ticket in the computer and it would spit out a visa from that country, right? Let's see. Happy Valentine's Day. Oh, yes, it's Valentine's Day. Back and popular demand, voice in my head spoken. Okay. I'm going to send you a couple of my novels before. Let's see, how's my battery doing here? Oh, I got a good an hour left. So anyway, living in Sweden in the 70s was great. I had this friend in a place called Forshuga, right on the main road. There was, Stockholm up here, Gutenberg up here, Stockholm here, and the other place that was the coastal place. I mean, it was crossroads. Norway was this way, Finland was this way. This way is the North Pole. This way was the ocean. Anyway, and it was called Forshuga. A little town, very pretty, very nice. And there was a railroad you could just jump on, bang, it took you straight to the airport, right? And so I would do that at least once a month, right? 2 weeks, and you go, and they put you in nice hotels. Like I went to Damascus in Syria, right? Really the fanciest hotel. And I remember, I was wearing a cowboy hat, cowboy boots, lime green shorts, and a super duper orange kind of Hawaiian shirt and mirrored sunglasses when I got off in Damascus. And I had this visa, that their government said, "Yep, we're letting this guy in. He's from Sweden." And there are all these gray Swedes over there, and then over there's the Swedes who've been living in Damascus, meeting the boring Swedes, and they were like, "Well, Swedes that leave Sweden are fun people. They really are." They're adventurous. They'll do anything. And so, that's how I for a good whole year, I traveled the Mideast. I went to, Syria, Libya, Iraq, Iran. Went to the place that's, I went to Israel. I went to the Strip. I went to Egypt. I went to Lebanon, and it was beautiful. The city in Lebanon was just beautiful. And now they blew it up, right? And they blew up everything. And all of the wars and things being blown up and disasters, these are not mistakes. They're not just nature doing this. No, this is like manufacturing consent by the human race to go along with the new federation. I mean, that's what this is all about. And this has been understood. You should go read about Albert Pike. Go read about our founding fathers who were all Masons, right? Go to Dark Journalists and watch Joseph P. Farrell spout off about all this. Now, I'm a good storyteller. Joseph is I was an itinerant scholar. He actually got the degrees, but he was a wild and crazy guy too. So Joseph P. Farrell, go check him out. He wrote a lot of really good books about all of this, right? About the whole, him and David Icke. David Icke is like a mystic who is like getting all this information and putting it out. And Joseph is a scholar who's also a mystic. So it's interesting. What else can I say? So there's two of you there. So have you guys been able to watch my more recent shows? It seems there is some entity, I'm sure it's within the algorithm of YouTube that lets me put these shows up, but they just you go to my channel, they just show you the popular ones, right? So they show you what I did a year ago or 3 years ago or ones that most and you hit the right button, it'll take you over to a place where you can see all of them, like the most recent one to the last one. I did that yesterday. And I don't know whether it's just me, this is your channel, and it lets me go in and look at that, or as if you guys can do it too. I would suggest, because the internet is going bye-bye, right? Within 2024 is going to be the year where you thought everything was really crazy since Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton, we had a deficit in the U.S. government at about $3 trillion. And in 6 years, Bill Clinton got that deficit down to basically $30 billion. Half of what they want to give to Ukraine to keep dying, right? And so so he did that in 6 years, right? And so we have a 30 trillion, 100 trillion, whatever $1 trillion deficit we have. It's like nothing. It doesn't matter. It's like funny money. It's monopoly money, right? There is no deal about it. What's the dealio about it, right? We still got about 40 minutes left. So, what do you guys? There's two of you there. So is this the you? Is this my friend Yo-Yo? Is this the you that I knew from back in the day? Anyway, and if it is, how you doing, buddy? It seems like you've gotten to a good place in your life, and I'm proud of you. I'm happy for you. Good on you, buddy. So, What time is it? Oh. So anyway, again, we're in a very interesting time. You know, what are you going to do with this interesting time? Like the 70s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, and 90s were all very crazy times. Most of you don't even remember many. Most of you weren't even alive then, right? But I remember them vividly because I was having a life. You know, here, right here. Here is a. This. I have about 100 of these, and this is 1984. So here's. Let's start. Okay, it's falling apart here. See, 1984. It's falling apart. So this is Ireland. Ireland. This guy is Rob. This guy is the head of anthropology department, NYU. And I was, just hanging out there and, doing my thing. And I was lecturing, right? And his boss got me to lecture at NYU. And he started hanging out with him. And he was in charge. He was, and so he wanted to know how he could have a life like mine. I said, let's just hang out with him. So he did. So here he is. So I went to school in Dublin. And here's the mayor. There's the mayor. There's the mayor. And this is when Dublin had its 2000th birthday. Right? And I had a friend from prep school who went out to Ireland. I told him about it. He went to Ireland. Instead of going to college, he went to Ireland. And he started a theater department, right? I mean, a theater, not a department, theater department. And Dublin hired his theater department to act all of the famous Irish folk, right? And so this was the big happy day, and they had a gigantic party, and all the actors and everybody were drunk to the point that they were like green and couldn't act their parts. So some of them could, but they kept vomiting. And so my friend Dave, who's the theater department was, basically said, Al, what do you think Rob and you and Melinda was Rob's wife. She was a really great photographer. She was another, photo buddy of mine. And so, and I knew her years before I knew Rob, right? And so she, so they got dressed up, right? And so Rob was good, right? So here's Ireland. This is right where, if I looked the other way, you'd be looking at the ocean. So this is the main drag of Western Ireland. This is going up the hill to this. You keep going, you don't even see the steep part in this picture, but the old Crone lives up there, right? And Tipperary is like on the other side of this mountain, right? And this is Glendore is over. If you turned around, you'd see Glendore. But this is the main road. This right here is the main. This goes to Skibbereen. So that's like their super highway. That's like the 95 corridor of the west coast of Ireland in 1984. Right now they have a 6-lane highway. And there's Archie's. I don't know if you can see it. There's Archie's, castle. His family. He was a duke in Scotland. And his family owned half of Western Ireland, and that's his castle. That's Archie's castle. Like I said, the Crone lived up there. Right? And this is 1984. This is in the early spring, and this is the Stop Shoreham campaign. That's 25A. That's one of the major roads that if this nuclear plant ever opened, that was way over here, it would, be and have an accident. This was one of the major roads that would get 1 million people. It's like being into Gaza right now, right? And so this was a Long Island life community, local, right? That was the name of the utility, Loco. And I basically was a strategist. I went to I went up there. I started building stuff. I started a construction company. I started a real estate business. I started a whole bunch of stuff because Donna wanted a nice picket fence. She wanted money, so I made money. And then I stumbled into this. They're building a what? And I went over there and I looked at it. It was like, what? Where's GE? Where's Babs and Wilcox? Where's any of the major contractors? And there was nobody there. Loco itself was building its reactor and bought the reactor from the Shah of Iran, and it was a 500 megawatt reactor, and they were sticking it into a building the size of a closet, and they had no idea what they were doing. And I went and talked to the director of the project, and I said, "Hey, here's my credentials. I worked at Los Alamos, St. Dias, Brookhaven boys over there know me really well, and I'm a filmmaker. I want to make, you're getting some guff about this. I want to tell your story." So they let me in, right? And I had my mother in front of the camera. My mom was like a queen. She was real tall, real beautiful, really curvy, white hair, every hair in its place, her nice little pearls around her neck, and her nice outfit, and she just took them apart. It wasn't me talking, it was her. Anyway, so I was a strategist. So I went to this thing called this meeting of anti-nuclear guys over in Connecticut, the Shad Alliance, and it was a joke. And there were these three grandmas from Long Island, from Shoreline, who had been fighting Loco for 16 years. And Loco wanted to put like 6 nuclear reactors there because of all this water, and Long Island Sound, and so we basically, I said, ladies, what is the Shad Alliance thing? It's like, you really, I said, if you want to stop this, it's the 3 of us and me, right? 3 of you and me, and then we'll build it from there. Because you girls have a lot of chutzpah, and you've shown that you could. And they went toe to toe with 3 grandmas went toe to toe with the Chase Manhattan Bank, Henry Kissinger, and the executives of Wilco. Anyway, so my strategy is the only way we could win is if all of Long Island was against the plant. And this was Ronald Reagan days, and this was a super duper Republican area. And so they basically, we were, commie, hippie, tree huggers, right? Anyway, but we didn't give up. We never, for 5 years, we did this 24/7. And every Friday and Saturday, we had really, Billy Joel kind of supported us, right? And we kept saying, Billy's going to play music, right? And these people would come to hear the music, and they would get enthralled by what we were teaching them. So here, if you can read that, can you read that? We forced them to have a hearing. The film I made of my mother, just lambasting the executives of Wilco. And I had a TV show, not me, but I was part of this production crew out of in New York City, and the show was called Potato Wolf. Go Google that, right? And it was the art organization was Collab, Collaborative Artists Projects, right? I was one of those guys. And when we did Potato Wolf, it was every Thursday night from 9 o'clock for 90 minutes, to about 11:30. And we had, on the average of we had more people watching our show than, because it was on, cable TV, right? You could do anything. So we opened up with, I had a girlfriend who was a martial art champion, and she would, we'd advertise, anybody who wants to try and beat this little girl up, show up. And I had my lawyer have a contract, and they had to sign it. And it said, if she kills you, it's on your nickel, right? And she would just tear these guys, and she'd be only wearing her underpants and brassiere, and she was quite hefty in the top, and she would just eat these guys alive. So that was the second or third. We had Coco Crystal, she had this pizza thing where if you got the special, every other pizza was $7 delivered, but the special was like $120 delivered. And, you could basically it brought you a mood elevator. And so she was the biggest weight seller in New York City, right? And she never got caught. She had everyone paid off. She had a perfect system. You paid for it. She delivered and buy these guys on bicycles, right? So in pizza boxes. And so she was our Julia Childs because she would make all of these yummies with product, and then everyone would be nibbling on them, and we'd be like, and so that was the first scene. And then we had this Annie Sprinkle. Go Google Annie Sprinkle. I met her at NYU. We both studying sociology, and she wanted to legalize and unionize prostitution. So she would have girls come in and show how to do the proper blow job or how to eat pussy or all those good things. And we could do that live on cable TV, And so, and it was educational. I mean, it was definitely educational. And all my buddies who, hey, can you come and help crew the show? Oh, sure. Is Annie gonna? Yep. So they would be the monkeys that the experiment we played on, and that the first 40 minutes was that. Right? Then we had this thing called Between the Lines. I had a girlfriend who was a stand-up comedian, and she was the TV host who a beautiful woman, blonde hair, a Jewish girl. I've always had a thing for Jewish girls, and I've had a lot of Jewish girlfriends. And I had a rabbi. I was learning to become a rabbi, and he was always fixing me up. And so, but this is what life is about. This is doing stuff, So, this is again going on in my community. This is on a Wednesday, right? There's always somebody playing a guitar. We had somebody always cooking over here, It was always good time, always educational, Working on self-love. That's the love you need. Didn't she win yep, I'm sure she did. So, and here's another fun thing I was very involved in. The rainbow gatherings. It was like fun. I did everything. I was a scout. I was a facilitator. I did everything but run the show. I didn't want to be there, but I was. During the running of the show, I was the house scholar and psychotherapist. So I was always at CALM, Center for Alternative Living Medicine, run by this guy, started by this Water. This guy was a Vietnam vet, surgeon, right? And he kind of, he was well educated. He went off to Vietnam to serve his country, and he saw such terrible things, he kind of dropped out. So he was part of Yaskin's Farm. And so he started CALM, right? Here's a buddy of mine, Rabbit, and he is talking to a kid, and he's tripping his brains out. The kid and him are like talking baby talk and understanding exactly what they're talking about. And this is when the Rainbow Gathering was this. Unconditional love, right? Not sex, not drugs. Unconditional love, right? Here's Garrick Beck. He's, he likes to be advertised as the founder of the Rainbow Gathering, but he was there, and he was Garrick Beck. His parents were these people. His parents, Judith Molina and Julian Beck, started the Living Theater, which was like the essence of avant-garde theater in America. Here's Joni. Right? Garrick called me up and begged me to come with him to go to Arizona, where Joni had been in a terrible car crash. And he wanted to break up with her, but he couldn't break up with her because she was all broken up. So he couldn't just say, oh, now you're going to be crippled for the rest of your life. Well, I'm see you, bye. So he's not that kind of guy. I mean, he's a stand-up guy, Garrick is. So he talked me and David to come down, and David and I had a fun time there. And Joni's only alive because she was in a terrible rainbow car crash. This girl came to pick her up at the airport. The girl had a flat tire. She lost the lugs of when she had one lug for one tire, and she's going down the highway at 70 miles an hour, and it snapped off. The wheel flew off, and there she is. She's warming me up. So what kind of dessert do you have if you don't have backache?
Ice cream.
That's ice cream. Yeah. I'm still waiting for my friend,
Oh, okay. All right.
and I'm getting more for the salad bar. So
I'm leaving at 2.
you're leaving at 2?
Yeah, so I'll tell
What
the next
what
one.
time is it now?
Almost 15 after 1.
Oh, really? Time is flying by. Okay, I can pay you off up to this point.
Oh, no, you can wait. I can tell her.
Oh, who's
Three.
yeah, Breeze. Okay, gotcha. So anyway, so there's Joni being carried in, and so we went to. The only reason she's alive is that the accident occurred. So what happened was the van she was in, she wasn't in a seat, no belt, no nothing. She was like being tussled around, and the door slid open. She went up the door, and the door closed on her leg. It's amazing it didn't chop it off. And then she was stuck to the van, and it rolled over on her 3 times. So she got crushed 3 times. So she was like guava jelly. The only reason she's alive was that this happened in where the Air Force had their fighter trainer guys, right? And so these guys would be flying around the mountains, and at least once a month, maybe 6 times a year, one of these guys would plow a F4 into the mountains, and then they'd stick them back together. That's where, I don't know if you know what a halo is. Halo is a metal circle, and they put pins in it to like hold you together. And so Joni had 30 of these halos all around her body, holding her together. Right? Otherwise, she had been there, at least 2 months. And poor Garrick was going out of his mind, and that's why he got, please, coming up. So David and I went there as I went there as a shamanic healer, and stand-up comedian, and David was my foil. So we were there for comic relief mostly. And so, Garrick picked us up at the airport. We went straight to the military hospital. Garrick had been there, so they knew him. So we walked in, and the doctors were waiting for me, right? Because they couldn't stand Joni. She was such a bitch. Think of the Jewish bitch and American princess, and that's Joni, right? And she was all about getting over. And I could tell you story after story after story. But if you were in the trenches, Joni is the person you wanted next to you, right? Because she wasn't hot like, Wonder Woman, but she would go over the top and run after the evil doer and scream at them to the point she was a scary monster. But I knew her really well. And so, and she had this power over men, which it didn't seem to affect me. And so I was a big challenge to her. But she had known me, and she knew that I'd come. I'd done some amazing things with people who were really hurt. And so, that's why get out of here, So she kept talking about me to the doctors. Doctors wanted to get rid of her, but they couldn't because she was in their hospital until she got to a certain point. They couldn't let her go. And so basically, when I showed up, they said, "So you're the Swami healer?" I said, "Well, I'm not that. I'm a osteopath, and I'm a herbalist, and I'm a psychotherapist, and I'm a social cultural forensic anthropologist, but no." Anyway, so they said, "We don't care. Just get rid of her. Get her so she can get out of here. You can do whatever you want." Right? So I did. I went muscle tested her. I figured out the regimens she needed. And one of them was, I said, why'd you do physical therapy? Well, because we haven't taken the halos off. I said, well, man, it's like she had these things for 2 months. Take them off. He said, well, we had to put her under and do an operation to do that. And I said, come on, you want to get rid of her? Get rid of those things. So I need to start doing physical therapy. I can't do that when she's all ringed up. So they did, and I did, and I got her out of there in 2 weeks. And these guys were like, once they did the operation and got her to a place, and I started getting her moved around and took her out of there. I said, listen, I'm going to take her out of here every day so then she doesn't bother you. But at night, we're going to roll her back in, put her in her medical bed. Because I had these really nice, way state-of-the-art beds so she wouldn't get, those kind of things wrong with her. So anyway, we got her, up and at 'em and back to New York in 3 weeks. We had a great time. And part of the thing, I found the best Mexican restaurant. And Dave and I first went there, and David he loves, he's Irish, so he can, get psychotropic with the schloss. And we got so drunk one time, and I don't really get drunk. I just get happy. He was, woo! And he stumbled into the margarita machine, and he kind of knocked it off its pegs, but didn't destroy it. And then and we were sitting next to it, so when this one guy was filling up a big jug of margaritas, and he was trying to get the last bit out, he knocked it on top of us, and we were covered in margarita juice. And so from that point on, they all came over rushing and, oh, don't sue us. And we just started dancing around and just having a great time, and went to every table and made everyone laugh. And so we became part of their family. And so we could go to that restaurant 24/7 and eat. And because they had the best, not just Tex-Mex, but real Mexican food. The stuff you might get at Mexico City. I mean, real moles, right? So anyway, so we did that for 3 weeks, and pretty much we got Joni drunk every night and get her back so she would sleep like a thing, and then we would, we'd still be sleeping there. So we didn't pay for a motel. We slept in the hospital. They rolled in beds, and we stayed there. And in the morning, we'd get up. We'd roll her in her wheelchair into the physical therapy, and I would put her through the physical therapy stuff that the kind of modalities that I helped develop for Fort Hamilton back in the 60s, early 70s. And anyway, and I did acupuncture, I did all kinds of things, and they were like, whoa. So their people were watching what I was doing, and they were picking, if you do it this way, And so they got more and more enamored with my skill set. And then when we got, okay, we're going home, and I said, can you stay? And I said, not really, I got things to do. But we can be friends, and I can come visit, and you can come visit me, and I'm sure you have contacts in New York, and when you do come to a meeting or consult or whatever, because these guys were really great surgeons. They could paste anyone back together. Afterwards, they were okay, but their whole shtick was pasting you back together. So back to the photos. So here's up in Ithaca, New York, and they wanted to turn the beautiful, Finger Lakes into a nuclear waste dump, and we stopped them, right? And not only that, the 3 counties seceded from the union. That's how we stopped them, right? And anyone can do it. We had to swear not to tell people how to do it. And this is, so I was making money in Long Island, and I bought this farm that had a beach right on the Atlantic Ocean. I bought a 100-acre farm right on the beach. You know, a third, and why this beach was in this farm is that these people went back in the day, and this is not the Atlantic Ocean's over there. This is the Great South Bay. This is, Fire Island is like over here, and so this was like all full of oysters and clams and all that kind of food, right? And so this was worth a lot. So there's my beach, right? So I bought this 100 acres on the beach, and it was right across the street from Southampton. There was the Mauritius little river, and on my deed it said I could build a bridge onto where Southampton Road is. I mean, this was worth $1 zillion, right? And there was some firebug who kept burning up. See, this part of Long Island is more like Massachusetts than New York, right? And so it's like New England. So there are all these New England farms that had farmhouses and barns that this firebug kept setting on fire. And I got the state and SUNY to get me grants, and we took those buildings and moved them onto this. And we had done one building like that, took a Civil War barn and turned it into a spanking brand new building, but it looked just like it was from the Civil War, but it was brand new foundation, wiring, plumbing, you name it. All the insides everything was brand new. It was just, we took all the wood off, remilled it, and put it back together, right? So I was doing stuff like this for 3 years, and my dad said, "Oh, well, you've always had these great ideas. I never listened to you." And I just started doing this, right? We've got a couple buildings in Sayville, and which was like a total shithole of a town. But then, a year later, it became where all the rich people, because there's only so much real estate on the water, right? So I bought all these commercial buildings that were just hunks of crap, and in less than 6 months, I renovated them all, put apartments upstairs where we're getting this is in 1984, we were getting $1,000 a month, because these were nice apartments, skylights, decks, big vaulted ceilings, and downstairs were commercial, right? A mink stole guy moved into one, a diamond bling guy moved into another. The next building, a lawyer took the bottom floor, and he took the top for himself. So those 4 buildings, we had a rent within 11 months from walking in, demo to getting a rent roll. We had almost a $16,000 rent roll, right? And we spent, I think we spent maybe 120. I mean, buying the buildings and putting them together. But the thing that was most valuable is I put together a crew. And in '84, in '86 was the savings and loan collapse. But before that, the real estate bubble burst then, and there were a lot of guys who had big businesses, and then they overextended themselves, and then they tried everything, and then they ended up like drinking themselves to death or cocaining themselves to death. Anyway, I met all these guys who had great skill sets, but nobody wanted to hire them. No one's going to lend them money to start another business. Meaning, I put them straight to work, right? And I made them live on the job sites, so they couldn't get some money and go get drunk. I'd go buy them beer and stay there, right? And they were really good. They woke up with the sun, around 6 a.m., and they would work straight on through till 2. And then they'd start drinking and partying, right? And that was fine, as long as they quit by 10 so they could get up at 6, and I would feed them. And by the time my dad pulled the plug on everything, I had bought this. We had 5 other properties. We had a rent roll of $42,000 in 2 years. We went from zero to rent roll of $42,000. We had spent $300,000, and every month we were making $42,000 in 1986. Right? And because I could sign the lawyer could sign the checks, and I would go to him and I said, "I'm doing this." So that makes a great idea, right? And we never ran anything by my father. And then my father, he came on his one job site. Nobody knew who he was. My dad was colonel. He wanted to be saluted to kiss the ring. And, you know, everyone told him, go fuck yourself, right? So he got upset and he pulled the plug on everything. And they sold everything to that lawyer. Because lawyers, you know, my father said, I just want to get rid of it, right? He didn't want to be reminded of his incompetency. I mean, making money would have, you know, been a measure of his incompetency because he had nothing to do with it, except, you know, it was his money. And I knew my father was going to do that. So when he pulled the plug, I said, fine, see you later, bye. He said, what? You're not even, I said, no, fuck you. It's, you know, have a good day. Because I had already, like, all the stuff I did with the Stop Shoreham campaign, all the stuff I did in New York with the art world, I kind of used everything that I was doing to do it. Meaning, the truck I had, the building materials I had, yeah, I would use it for all this kind of stuff, right? And when we renovated the abandoned buildings, a lot of the stuff that most people would have thrown in the dumpster, I put in my truck and drove to New York, and we used, you know, so that's what I did. And that's what this whole year was, 1984, right? So here is, you may have heard of Preston Nichols, right? I was part of the U.S. Psychotronic Society, and so was Preston, so was Al Bielek, so was, what's his name? Bill Cooper. These are all friends of mine. I knew all these guys, right? So I knew, you know, I was the guy who found a Montauk project because in the Stop Shoreham power plant, you know, I was trying to figure out why do they need a nuclear power plant? This is an island that has only X amount of people. It's just houses. There's no big aluminum factories, nothing big. Grumman's about the biggest, and they're moving out of Long Island. Why do they need all this electricity, right? So I went and got all the stats from the New York State Power Authority, and it would say the utilization of power every day, every minute, right? And there were points where they had these big power lines going out to Montauk, and there's only like, you know, 1,200 people living out there, and they got enough juice out there for 1 million people, and so that's what are they doing? So one day I drove out to Montauk. I went to the sheriff and I said, "Hey, what's going on here?" And I had all the stats, and I put them out in front of him. I said, "So what happened on July blah 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 in 1962, in 1970, and all these dates?" And he said, and I go, "What do you mean?" He goes, "Well, Montauk, this a little filling vision. There's nobody here. There's never been crime. There's no big deal. But starting on that date, that first utilization of big juice, on that date, we had a murder. That on all of these dates, there were other murders and really terrible things. And the more power that Montauk's using, it correlates to all of these. We have nobody. We don't even know who's doing it. We just, when this happens, we just call this number, and these guys in suits come and sweep it all away, and we keep going." And I said, "So where is the epicenter of this?" And he took us to that Fort Hero, right on the beach with the big 6 centimeter, this gigantic microwave antenna, right? And that was part of the Manhattan Project. That was part of mind control. That was part of time travel. That was part of Tesla's, Philadelphia experiment. Part of the rainbow. Part of all these things, right? And that's how I stumbled into it. And that's, that's how I I knew a lot of the people in the esoteric world in New York, since I was a kid, starting with Billy Kluver, right? The guy who brought modern art. Why MoMA exists, Billy Kluver, right? Why Whitney exists, Billy Kluver. Why we know about the background radiation of the universe, Billy Kluver. He was part of the RAD lab up there at MIT. So let's see how much time we got left. Ooh, we're getting down to almost the red line. So here's Marge Harrison, right? It's this young girl who was going to law school at SUNY, And, she was our she went up against Chase Manhattan Bank 3 times to the Supreme Court and won. And so we were best buds, right? Best buds with benefits. She had the benefits. But whenever she was down, she would come stay with me, and I would. So here is our theater group, 6th Street Theater Group, and we're doing Wisdom of the King. And these girls were the crone Oracle of Delphi. And here is I had a beautiful, this is the 59th Street Bridge. And this is just where Manhattan Bridge looking north, right? And there were all these big, tall factories they built for World War II. They were about 20 stories high, and they were all concrete red brick. And there was no one there. And it was kind of right where the Brooklyn Bridge and the Manhattan Bridge kind of come together. And this was a little bit past that, right? And this was where all of the refineries kind of went from the Williamsburg Bridge up to here. Before New Jersey, this was the refining area, right? And this is where PS1 was, back over here, right? And I had this whole loft. It was about 12,000 square feet. Windows, this is my whole view, right? And you look the other way, I saw the Atlantic. I saw Brooklyn to Coney Island, right? And I saw out east to, I had this amazing view, right? And the guy who owned that, he was a real estate guy, and I was his go-to guy to fix things, to figure stuff out. What building should I buy? Where the artist, rich people, are going to come next, right? And here's Lynn, and she started a thing called the Miracle Grill, and Bobby Flay, all those TV shows. This girl is the godmother of all of that, right? And she and I were best of friends. She had a boyfriend who was my good buddy, Val. He was really brilliant. Whatever he did, he could do, right? He was one of my electrical helpers. He became master electrician. I was doing healing. He became an RN, right? He was truly amazing. So here's one of the abandoned buildings, and these are all guys who have either gotten Nobel Prizes or Pulitzers or a Emmy, right? Or they're all musicians and writers for TV, and that was my group. Right? And this was a place called Save the Robots, right? And Save the Robots was Elaine's on acid. And here is Quando, and this was a totally destroyed school in the Lower East Side, way down on Avenue Z. They call it, Alphabet City. And this was a big, gigantic gymnasium. And basically, I turned this place into the most grooviest dance party with like three Fresnels, right? That was it, right? Because there was no real. So this is one lighting instrument that I have. This is when I was using optics. And there's one light source, a T11, one T11. And I had lenses going in 10 different directions from one light bulb. And that's how I lit up the whole friggin' dance floor. And, and everyone was smoking so much, I didn't even need a smoke machine, right? And here is the bar of that. And and all the rich, famous, everybody was there. And here is Beth B. This is my sweetie from Juilliard, right? Carl Orff, this was his, she was like an amazing dancer, choreographer. And she started with her husband, the kitchen in Soho. But before then, it was her. And we had this amazing relationship where she'd be doing this. It's like the Venn diagram, right? And at certain points, we would come together and have this static relationship. And then we would go back, and we did that for about 15 years. I'd be traveling, she'd be traveling. We would come back into New York. She didn't have a boyfriend. She didn't have this. She had a place to stay. I didn't have a place to stay. And I was like, she was my community, Billy Joel wrote a great song about, you are my temple, you are my home, I'm always home with you. This was her, right? And so, I mean, we just had this amazing physicality, but it wasn't, it was this thing of intimacy. And so here's some of her girls. And we just went in and did this at MoMA because my mentor was Billy Cooper, the guy who started MoMA, right? So, hey, Billy, I wanted to go. Sure, no problem. Here's me painting. And I was like in this abandoned building. I had no floor, and and I have to do a bunch of paintings that were, Mary Boone, right here. She and this guy's from Germany. He was a art critic, and there was a guy named Ralston Farina, who was my really good friend, and everyone hated him in the art world because he was obnoxious, but he was brilliant, and he was, I could get him to be funny, right? And we would go up and do stuff, and people who didn't know him said, "Wow, this guy's great." Once they got to know him, I can't stand him. So he, didn't stay in any one place. So we traveled a good deal, right? Anyway, he went to California and got sick and died AIDS, and he left a whole bunch of art, right? And after he died, he became, the next thing. So Mary was like, she got me to get all the stuff that he had and finish it, right? I did the painting finishing, and she sold all these things because he's dead, and he's now become really the it boy. And so, we had about 300 kind of pieces that he worked on somewhat, and I just kind of finished them. Or this one, but start him up and make it look like his. And this is in an abandoned building, this building here was an abandoned building. I was doing it because I would live in abandoned buildings. Why spend rent when you can have a place like this? And that was burnt out like 2 months before this. I mean, it was charred. Let's see if I have a picture of the charredness. We had our own theater, the Alchemical Carlo Altomani. I mean, tremendous, brilliant theater guy, but stone, drug addict, here he is. But it was great because these are people on heroin doing great theater. I mean, there's Carlos there, right there. And so, let's see. This lady was head of psychology, and this girl was second at the New School. And these are two New School queens, right? They were proteges of Lisette Modell. Not so much as photographers, that's how I met them, because I was one of Lisette Modell's proteges as a photographer. These girls, again, they were like sweetie, they were thang, and they had power, and they loved hanging out with me and having me as their, their bologna in their sandwich. Here is, no, let's see, what's this guy's name? Italian boy. He knew how to run stuff. Here's one of my Tesla coils. And this device I used, so we had a big conference at the United Nations about free energy. I was part of this thing called alternative technologies, right? And so here we have this big, and this 1984, the World Wide Web had just showed up, and we had people from all over the world at this conference on the internet. So there's Louis Tropia. He's the godfather of punk music. He was worked for A&R. There's me at 40-ish. And I was Mr. Video, so I the guy who is Captain Louis, who is the grandson of Mr. Sony, and he was Japanese, didn't speak any English, but he was my bud. And he had a place down on 6th Avenue. And he would give me all this, so he gave me a Betacam camera. That was great because it was, you could put it on the air. VHS, not so, you could, but so here's Christine, and there's my dog, Jack, who was a vicious dog, but around us, he was like a little guy. He loved us. So there's my second wife. And this is the restaurant I had. I had all these kind of what I called dumpster restaurants. So this is an abandoned building, right? The city has, and they would cinder block these buildings up to the second floor, right? And so, they'd have shooting dens in there. People would set fire to stay warm and burn the inside out of the building. And so that's what this was. The whole inside, years before, caved in. We cleaned all the garbage out and made this amazing restaurant down on Avenue D, right near the 16th Street, near the power plant. And all the rich people would come, right? So this is Carrie Shea, this lady right here, and she was the most powerful political person in New York City, in New York State, and probably in the United States. I mean, so here's her limo, a 1980 something limo, and her driver was this, detective from New York City. And there is Sarah Ferguson, who started the Brooklyn Academy of Music, and there is my lovely, beautiful Grady. So all these girls have been my sweeties at some time. I was, these girls were just my buddies with benefits, like Beth. But Rita, she was my wife. And when I was with her until she died, we could all hang out, and she loved these girls because they'd tell her stories and she'd laugh hysterically, and they were just happy. We were just a great crew. All my girlfriends have always been able to hang out with each other and tell stories about me. And so here we are so here it is, abandoned building in the worst of neighborhoods, and all the rich people are coming because it is Manhattan. It is, they can just take, a cab or a subway there, and here's what it looked like on the inside. And Bobby Flav was not our first, but he was worked. And so Lynn was part of that. We did this. She worked at a lot of other people's restaurants, and this was the interim, right? And then she started the Miracle Grill. Right? And she had about 5 of them. So here is Christine, and we're on my beach in Florida. I'm not Florida, in Long Island. And here's one of my buildings in Sable, right? And this is one of my oldest friends. I've known him almost 60 years. Here's his kid. His son is a zillionaire. He's like, Jamie Dimon's second, right-hand man. And here is his daughter, who is a big-time lawyer in New York. And we're about to run out of juice. Yeah. Let's see how much time we got left. A few more minutes. A couple more pictures. Here's a picture of Dave. David. He always wanted to be David. There's David. Right? So him and I, we did a lot of interesting stuff. Here's me. And so it's great to have your own beach. You could be nudist on it, right? And so you can kind of see one of the buildings back there that we had moved on to. We had moved 4 buildings on there. 2 of them we had put on their own foundations. So here is the burned out building. This guy has gotten a Pulitzer Prize. And this is my youngest sister, the one who tried to kill me. Not her, but her mom tried to kill me when she was 4. And here is her oldest daughter. And this my oldest sister's youngest son. And I had just taken them. They wanted to go see the Rolling Stones. And I was the Emmy at Madison Square Garden. So I put them right on the stage. And then we went to, those guys, after the show, they went to Buffalo Roadhouse for something to eat and to play. And I brought them there, and they were like, there's George Harrison, there's, Bob Dylan, there's, Al, how you doing, right? And then, so by around midnight, this party was going on in my abandoned building. David every Friday would have this until the sun rose, right? There it is. There's John there. So this guy's Pulitzer Prize poet, right? But that's kind of what you look like when you're a heroin addict too. So, but he was a great poet. And these girls, again, they were theater folk, but psychologists. Margaret Mead. These girls hung out with Margaret Mead and what's her name? The black lady, Zora Hurston Phipps or whatever her name is. But this is me. I'm either drunk or I'm not quite drunk enough or whatever. But there's my niece, and he's like one of the only white cute boys there, so she's kind of. Here's Julian Schnabel. Me and Julian Schnabel in my kitchen in Long Island. And there's John Bowman and me and Mary Boones. There's one of my art pieces that was in the Whitney Annual. George Sofrini, who is the director of the ABC Nightline, right? And when, Annie Sprinkle was doing the show, he loved to come to the show. This guy is a guy named, there's Lewis, and here is a guy named Chipmunk, and he was the voice of Paul Maurice. And there's a mural I painted, right? And pretty much I did it with my fingers, right? Fingers and masking tape and spray paint, right? And I did this whole mural with the back wall of this abandoned, school building. This was their cafeteria, and there's Carrie Shea again. And this girl is a diplomat from China. And here's me. And so when Ronald Reagan became president, they got upset with giving us money, through the NEA. So here's an NEA guy who came. He kind of said, we were going to have a big hearing of why we, they've gotten $6 million. Yeah, 8 years. We did a lot of art. We started, you name it, we started it. Like PS1, Knitting Factory, Franklin Furnace, kitchen, you name it, right? And so anyway, I had him. I put a piece of canvas on a sheetrock wall. Him and I just screwed forward and put canvas on it, and then I started doing my thing with. This is how I started doing the painting. I lay it out three-dimensionally, right? I do trompe l'oeil, right? I give perspective. I do all kinds of things, and I do it, and then I get. I'm good at making it look interesting, relatively close up. Here's Keith Haring's. Familiar. Here's me again, almost 40. There's Jer. He was my best man when I met. This is Donna Ann's cousin from London, and he was like 12 when we got married. Here he is, about 20, and he's living with me in New York. There he is. And we changed his life. And there he is in our hallway. Here's us in Brooklyn, working at my friend's foundry. So anyway, low on wiper fluid. Yes. Anyway, so this is Yo-Yo. I'm back. And personality is good. The personality seems to be doing well. I'm glad you're doing well. Anyway, so I'm about to run out of battery. I'm in the red zone. So what time is it anyway? Yeah. So I'm going to say, arrivederci. I'll talk to you next week. And remember, your job is to be consciously intent you are. Consciously awareness you are. You live to love creation. Not to be famous, not to be rich, those things are just sidebars. They will occur when they need to occur, right? But what you need to do is serve love's co-creation. If you're not, you're just wasting time, And you are digging a hole for yourself, right? you're making yourself more miserable. If you're worrying about what mommy and daddy said, if you're worrying about what other people say, if you're worrying about anything of that nature, what your net worth is, no, forget about it. So, how much more juice? Are you in the red line yet? No, it's 14%. So, but I like, I can't let the battery die because then it confuses everything. I got to end the stream when everyone's happy, right? So, is everyone happy? Remember, conscious intent I am, consciousness aware I am, okay? Okay. Maybe I'll see you tomorrow, maybe later, who knows, okay? Well, we have 5 people. So how about some more thumbs up? How about some, hey, yo, I know you're rich. Throw some money into my PayPal. And that's, you want to get a hold of me, get a hold of me at my email, right? The dudeawake42@gmail. Dudeawake42@gmail. Right? Let's see some, before I go, there's 5 of you. Let's see some thumbs up. Come on, you can do it. I know you can. Let's see you subscribe. Let's boost the algorithm. Okay? Okay. So come on. Come on. Some more. Who the hell would you that? Anyway, well, so what have you been doing? You still sucking on your mom's tit? You still angst about your life? Or anyway, move my head a little bit this way. But that's you isn't anybody different than anybody else, right? How much we suffer is all up to us because all we have to do is get out of our own way, and be there for other people. Right? So you want to talk about anything? Get a hold of me at the dudeawake42@gmail. Dudeawake42@gmail. Anybody else out there want to get a hold of me? Dudeawake42@gmail. Yeah, let's see. Australia, not English. Not that British. Not that British guy. Okay, there you go. You're not. I thought there was a guy who was from New Zealand. I forget his name, but basically, a lot of people. Well, that guy's what are those people who live under a troll? That's a troll. And the good people who are here are from the troll. So you're not the guy I'm thinking you were. You're not Yo-Yo. Yo-Yo is from Connecticut, right? Connecticut. So how is Australia doing? Is it still burning alive? I don't know. Anyway, so let us just see how much juice. Yeah, I'm in the red zone. I gotta go. Okay, I love you guys. Again, you get a hold of me. Dudeawake42@gmail. Anybody wants to get a hold of me? Dudeawake42@gmail. Dudeawake42@gmail. And throw something in the PayPal because I went to the effort to make it so it works. I'd like to know if it works. Okay. Talk to you later.